James Kaufman, World News Report today. Solar flares and geomagnetic disturbances may be linked to increase in heart attacks and strokes. Some studies suggest that solar flares and geomagnetic storms may increase the risk of heart attacks and strokes, though a direct causal link is still being researched. These events can disrupt the Earth's magnetic field, which may affect the body's cardiovascular system by influencing circadian rhythms, blood pressure, and heart rate variability. The effect appears to be stronger in females and higher-risk patients. How solar activity may influence heart attacks and strokes? Well, this is still being studied, but this is what we know thus far. Cardiovascular system disruptions, i.e. blood flow. Geomagnetic storms are linked to increased cardiovascular mortality and have shown an association with higher rates of mitochondrial infarction or heart attacks and strokes. Biological rhythm impact. Research suggests solar activity may affect the body's internal clock, leading to disruptions in biological rhythms, which in turn could impact the heart. Now we're going to address this a little bit further in just a moment and discuss how it also impacts sleep, or the ability to sleep. Heart rate variability. Geomagnetic disturbances have been shown to reduce heart rate variability, a measure of the variation in time between heartbeats. This can be a sign of a stressed cardiovascular system. Higher risk for some groups. Some studies indicate that the impact is not uniform, with certain groups, like women, being more vulnerable to geomagnetic changes. High-risk individuals and older adults may also have a higher susceptibility. Now, we can go much further into that, but we're going to go over the basics today. And if y'all like me to go into why women are affected more in the future, let me know. Several studies have been done. One study found a link between severe geomagnetic storms and a higher risk of hemorrhagic stroke, or SAH, and an increased risk of ischemic stroke, IS. A separate study found that the days with severe geomagnetic storms were associated with a higher risk of both types of strokes or cardiovascular mortality. Some research indicates a significant increase in heart attacks and strokes during geomagnetic disturbances, particularly in populations like women. And they keep going back to that. There's actually huge articles written about this. The current research is not conclusive, but suggests a potential link worth further investigation. A complete understanding of the potential impact requires more studies to confirm a direct causal relationship. Now, at the end, I've decided that we will, in fact, go into the information we have about women being perhaps at higher risk. And there is a little repeat because I use several sources. While a direct cause and effect relationship has not been proven and may not be able to be proven, a growing body of observational studies suggest a link between geomagnetic disturbances caused by solar activity and an increased risk of heart attacks and strokes. The energetic particles from solar events like solar flares can cause these geomagnetic storms on Earth. Heart attacks or mitochondrial infarctions. Several studies have found statistically significant associations between heightened solar geomagnetic activity and increased hospital admissions and deaths from myocardial infarctions or heart attacks. A 2025 study in Brazil, for example, found a surge in heart attacks and hospitalizations on days with elevated solar activity, particularly among middle-aged and older women. Research also suggests a strong link to strokes. A 2014 meta-analysis found that geomagnetic storms were associated with a 19% increased risk of stroke, with the risk being even higher in people under 65 years old. This also goes over the heart rate variability. Possible biological mechanism is the effect on the autonomic nervous system, which controls involuntary bodily functions. Some studies show that geomagnetic disturbances can reduce heart rate variability, a key indicator of heart health, particularly in individuals with pre-existing coronary heart disease. And I do apologize for any mispronunciations. Disrupted circadian rhythms. The potential impact of solar activity on the body's sleep-wake cycle and other psychological functions could also increase cardiovascular risk. So they are saying that there is an impact on our body's sleep-wake cycle, and that in turn could actually influence cardiovascular risk. Now, we'll do a deep dive on this in just a second, but there's a disproportionate effect on women. Recent studies have highlighted that women, especially middle-aged and older women, may be more susceptible to the cardiovascular effects of geomagnetic disturbances. And they think they know why, and I'll let y'all know in just a moment. Higher risk for vulnerability individuals, people with a history of heart disease and cardiovascular issues, such as prior heart attacks and or stable angina, appear to have a higher risk of heart problems following any geomagnetic activity. All evidence comes from observational studies only, which can show associations but cannot prove that solar flares are the direct cause of these heart attacks or strokes. We have a huge need for further research in this area. The exact mechanism by which geomagnetic activity influences the human body is being heavily investigated currently. Now you'll have to remember, we are electrical beings. Every time you move your finger, think, speak, these are electrical signals or pulses that you're sending to different parts of your body to make those things occur. So it's pretty obvious that it should affect us. While more research is needed to understand the exact mechanisms, studies suggest that women may be more sensitive to geomagnetic disturbances due to a combination of hormonal and physiological factors. These effects appear to be particularly pronounced in middle-aged women. I believe they're talking about menopause. The body's production of hormones like melatonin and serotonin is influenced by Earth's electromagnetic field. These hormones are crucial for regulating the circadian rhythms, blood pressure, and other vital functions. Geomagnetic storms can disrupt this regulation. Hormonal variations between men and women, especially those related to the menstrual cycle and menopause, could make women more susceptible to these disruptions. Some studies have also shown that high geomagnetic activity can lead to a significant increase in the stress hormone cortisol. Since women's cortisol response and stress sensitivity can differ from men's, this could be a contributing factor to the different health outcomes. Geomagnetic activity is known to affect heart rate variability or heartbeat, which is a key indicator of the autonomic nervous system's health. Research suggests that geomagnetic disturbances can cause more significant variations in women's heart rates compared to men's, potentially reflecting a greater sensitivity of the female cardiovascular system to these external factors. Intense solar and geomagnetic activity has been linked to an increase in the inflammatory markers in the body. Since inflammation is a factor in cardiovascular disease and gender differences exist in inflammatory responses, This could also play a role in women's increased risk. Now, obviously, women with pre-existing heart conditions may be at a higher risk of heart attacks at all periods, but especially during high solar activity. While men have a higher overall rate of heart attacks, studies show that the relative increase on days with geomagnetic disturbances is disproportionately higher for women. This indicates that these events may act as a trigger for a more sensitive system. Now, it is important to remember that the current evidence is all based on primarily observational studies, which show a correlation rather than a direct cause and effect relationship. More research will be needed to definitively establish the biological reason behind women's heightened susceptibility to geomagnetic disturbances. And with that, guys, I'll leave it to you. Tinfoil hats on. We got a big one coming in tomorrow, late into the 7th. God bless. Please share, subscribe, and always remember that anything's possible in Bizarro World.